so that we can share this back to our members who weren't able to join us today. So I want to thank all of you for taking the time to be with us this afternoon. I want to especially thank the members of the Bright MLS team for joining us today. We have Ryan Donnellan. He is the Bright MLS CEO. Kurt Miller, who is the Regional Vice President for Central Pennsylvania. And Solomon, who is their social media specialist, has joined us this afternoon. So I have some questions that I am going to ask Brian, but also this is meant to be more of a dialogue. So any questions that any of you as attendees might have, I'm going to ask that you type them into the chat button or into the Q&A section. We'll make sure that we get those questions over to Brian and or Kurt. So let's get this going. So Brian, thank you for being here. We really, really appreciate it. And I think one of the questions I've been asking everybody as we've been doing these interviews is, how are you doing and how is the Bright team doing during these challenging times?
Well, Shauna, first of all, thanks for having us. It really is a pleasure being here. We've done a couple of these now, and it actually is nice because I think this is a time where we've all come together. The Bright team actually is doing great, I think. We've always been a largely work from home sort of environment. At any particular time, at least 50% of the folks are working from home. We have an office in Rockville, as you know, and then one up in King of Prussia. And then we have folks that are across the 6 states in DC that we're in. It's been through phases. We got up there, it was really great. And then I think you could see staff was like, oh my God, we're still home, and wondering what was going on. And I think we're back to getting ready to the new normal. And I'm sure as you're going to see, this is going to have an impact on how people work moving forward. But, we had an all-staff meeting yesterday. We had people just asking whatever question they could. We spent about an hour asking all sorts of questions, financial questions, and are jobs safe, and a variety of different things. But the business is moving. We were instructed by the board and the executive committee, who are meeting quite often. In fact, the meetings are probably one of the biggest things that we're having. Keep the market open, and I think staff is excited. Like I said, we spent an hour with them yesterday. I think they're adjusting fine, and they're wondering what's going to be happening down the road, just like everybody else is. But, thank you for asking. I think I've recognized that I need better Wi-Fi and a better space to work in at home. And, other than that, everything is good.
Good. I'm glad to hear it. So, Brian, you've been in the MLS industry for a while. So wanted to get your thoughts as to how you think this feels different, feels the same as to the past housing market challenges, and what do you think it will happen to this industry after the worst of the pandemic is over?
It's a good question, and you told me ahead of time. I'm a numbers person, and I enjoy. I think they explain a lot. We do compare it to past things, and I wasn't in this at 9/11, but I was in this in the 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12 sort of downturn. There's a lot of things that feel similar, but I will tell you the overarching piece of this feels vastly different. We've been sent home, we're working from home, we're trying to do a business that interacts with people out there. I think it feels a lot different, and I will tell you this. It feels a lot different depending upon where you are. Pennsylvania is a lot different than Eastern Maryland, for example, and different than Southern Virginia. So it's a lot of different things, and the feel is different. The outcome feels the same, but the feel is vastly different in this one than in the past. In terms of where it goes, as I said to you before, I have a finance background, a lot of investment banking and some other things. And what I know is I don't know a lot more than I think I do know. And I always keep that in mind, that there is so much going on out there. Mm-hmm. There are so many things that are different than any other situation that we've been in. And it's across the board. And some of them are still good. Like rates are still great. The housing, there's still not enough housing for folks to buy out there in a variety of different lands. As a general statement. But we've got job things to worry about. So I don't know. It seems to me that fundamentally we should get out of this. But you never know. And you know, across the Bright footprint, I mean, there's a lot of activity still happening. I mean, we still have 95% of the listings in, and I know we're going to speak a little bit more about the York and Adams area, but there's still activity happening. Different, but it's still happening.
Great.
I probably didn't answer your question there.
That's okay. That's okay. It's good to get your perspective for someone who has his finger on the pulse of so many different areas, not just central Pennsylvania.
Right.
But what is some of your thoughts on what are the best resources that our members should be looking at, and what are you looking at in trying to gauge what's happening in our housing market?
You know, everything, really. NAR, local associations, our statistics. I think you just look for whatever it is you can that you can find some sort of new insight into what's happening in there to try to find some advantage. And I know it's going to be different for everybody depending upon where they are, what the trends are. You know, I think what these pandemics do is highlight certain things. And I actually try to see if you can turn them into opportunities. Like, I think there's going to be opportunities for Bright as a company moving forward here. But I think the same holds true for everybody. What are the opportunities? What's being challenged out there? And then how do I fill that? If we look at some of the aspects of our business that have changed and inserted themselves into this business, whatever that may be, there was something missing that they filled and were able to do so, and they did that well. So, you know, that's whatever out there you can find, whether it be news, whether it be trends, whether it be data, you know, try to figure out what it is that's going to help you figure out how you can adjust to this market and where it's going to go forward, because we know that every little bit that happens in these crazy times stays with us moving forward. It embeds itself in sort of the business.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because RAAC has kind of taken the perspective is that we're considering this the real estate off season.
Yeah.
And we've been telling our members that in the athletic world, champions are made in the off season. So use this time wisely, consider your off season, get the training, get the things in place that you need to do so that when we get out of this, you're figuring how you're going to champion this industry again. So
and I think you're absolutely right. And one of the things that we don't, and it's really hard to do because, you know, in the normal course of business, brokers and agents are super busy and, you know, their days are, but, you know, all the things that Bright does offer, you know, in terms of whether it be HomeSnap or Remine or some of the other tools within inside of Matrix, there's so many things that this is a good time to start looking into to see how it is you can exploit some of these things in there that other folks aren't using. And there's a lot of stuff there to do.
Awesome. So can you get a little bit more specific with us? What changes has Bright put into place as a result of the coronavirus pandemic? And what are some other items and resources you're putting out there to assist our members during this time?
Sure. It's a good question, and it's always sort of changing. So when I said to you, one of the first mandates that the executive committee of the board said is you need to do everything you can to keep this market going, to keep it as liquid as possible. And I know that really does vary depending upon where you are, because some of them are pretty much not liquid. Having said that, we're going to do all we can to try to do that. And it seems to me the first thing that we could do is as much as we could virtually. And, you know, there's a lot of rules around the statuses about what you can and can't do, how you can put videos in there, how you can't put videos in there, branded videos and all those other different things. And if we get specific questions around that, you know, I sometimes get lost on that, and Kirk can help with us. But as much as we can do to help a virtual, whether you're doing a Facebook sort of thing, whether you're videoing something, however it is we can get there so that at least somebody can continue to look at what that was and help them get it out there so that they can see it a lot easier. In that regard, we've tried to build it into the workflow as well, so it's easier to be seen. We've tried to work with some of the third-party vendors out there, such as Zillow and HomeSnap and everybody else, that the outcome of these things could be seen, because quite honestly, where they're being stripped out and nobody would see them, because, you know, obviously Zillow didn't want some of these things in there, but we're doing all we can to actually make a virtual showing of whatever kind it is you have easier to do. The second thing that we were trying to do is take advantage of some of the statuses that we have. And we're going to go down this road, I'm sure. It's very difficult to actually explain all the statuses. And what we don't want to do is make it more confusing than it ever was. So, you know, we could change different aspects of active. We could change different aspects of coming soon or whatever, we decided that what we were going to do is take a status such as temp off and try to take advantage of it where nobody else could right now. Right now, the only folks that can see temp off are realtors and we, the professionals. And we thought that this was one way that they could leverage so that they could work with their clients about all these. They can see when these things went into temp off, how they went into temp off. And typically you couldn't actually market these things before. And we're allowing folks to do that. Again, it'll be easier to put the rules back in temp off once we get out of this situation, as opposed to changing 5 different aspects of the other statuses. So that's what we thought. We thought 2 things. We'll relax some of the rules, get as much virtual stuff as we could, relax some of the rules around temp off, allow brokers and agents to work within the Bright MLS community and engage their consumers, their buyers and sellers that way, where that stuff wasn't going out to other areas. So we thought those were a couple areas that we were going to accentuate. The other thing too was the reporting, that we were going out with daily reports about what was happening in the market and how that was impacting, so that people could see where and how they were being impacted. Those were the 3 areas I think we were doing the most to try to help folks. Oh, actually, and forgive me, training. The training staff did a lot of short videos. As an example, a lot more people were entering their own listings in at this point and haven't put a listing in a long time. So we actually focused in some areas that might be able to help folks do those a little bit faster and quicker. Nothing very long, just quick hits into different training pieces.
Okay. So just delving into that question a little bit more, and you alluded to it already, but one of the specific ones has been about, has Bright considered pausing the days on market for active and active under contract statuses, and why or why not Bright has decided not to go in that direction?
We did, and I'll tell you, I got wind of this prior to things going crazy. So this was probably 2 weeks prior to everybody being sent home. So we're talking the end of February, the beginning of March, when we really started thinking that there was going to be impacts to the market. So we started looking into this. And we had our developers working on it. And at the time, it wasn't a huge thing to pause DOM, but it was a lot of work to unpause DOM because of everything that it touches. But we figured all those different things out. While we were doing that, we were working with a variety of other different people in the industry, with a lot of the brokers, and quite honestly, with the third parties. And we came to the conclusion that if we paused DOM, that we could potentially put more confusion into the market than was before. For example, each broker calculates DOM differently, and there would be different calculations for that. The third-party vendors, portals, had decided that they actually weren't going to do it, and I think they still have stayed with that. And they all calculate their DOM differently. And then finally, NAR and CMLS is the Council of MLSs, has suggested, along with some of the larger broker groups out there, that we don't mess with DOM, that we leave it alone, that everybody knows what it's going to be, and we'll be able to look at this area and see, these are specific times that things are happening. So based on all those things, it's a conversation that actually, Shauna, it comes up less and less. It was a big topic. Mm-hmm. I don't even know how many weeks we're into now, but I want to say 3 or 4 weeks out. It was a big topic back then, and it's sort of fallen off. I think no matter what it is that you do, you're going to look back at this point and either eliminate DOM one way or the other in terms of what it is you're doing and how it is you're doing it, because it's either too high or it was 0. Neither one of those is going to be an accurate measure of what was out there. Sure,
and everybody's in the same boat, and they're all going to have to explain the same reasons why the days on market is longer. So
absolutely true. There was only one place that I know of, maybe 2, but one place that I know of that DOM was shut down, and it was shut down in New York City, and it was done by Street Easy, who is owned by Zillow, and really the only quasi sort of MLS in the area. I'm not aware of anywhere else, but there may be one place that did.
Okay. So a lot of our members are getting the question then from their sellers, should they temporarily take their home off the market until the pandemic is over? And what advice would you give to our members in assisting them to guide their clients in the best direction?
So as I said to you, listen, your guys know better than I do what's the right thing to do in some of these things. All I can tell you is we've made the temp off status an area that you can go to where no DOM is accumulated, and you can market it just about as well as you did before. Now, it doesn't go to the third-party markets, but quite honestly, I see that as an advantage to the professional being seen. If I'm a home seller or buyer, and you're the only person that can connect me to folks that are buying and selling out there, I see that as an advantage to take right now. So we try to, and like I said, we try to create a variety of different ways to allow you to do that in the temp off status, and not have any accumulation of DOM in there. But it can also still be in the regular, and it can be in coming soon as usual as well too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the one thing I've often said is I don't know if now is the right time to take your property off the market, because honestly, there's a ton of people who are in their houses right now and having these thoughts in their head that these four walls just seem to be getting smaller and smaller and smaller. I know I feel that way. I always thought my house was the perfect size, but right, your kids are home from college and it's a little small, isn't it?
It's a lot small.
Yeah.
It's a lot small. As a matter of fact, she was working out here this morning and I had to kick her out.
Hey, I'm in my dining room right now, which I'm calling Command Central, mostly because it overlooks my children's playroom. And if I'm going to be working from home for years on end, we'd have to figure out something else, because this just wouldn't work out very well for us. So
you didn't ask this question, but as a company, it has been one of the biggest challenges, I think, is at home, that the line between work and home is all but gone. Mm-hmm. And then if you're managing younger ones or even older ones that may be in your home, that sort of, it all just becomes a big hot mess.
Yeah, it does. It really does. So I've received this question. I'm just going to say a few times, and so I'm just going to ask you a straightforward. So is Bright considering waiving the quarterly fee at all?
Actually, it does come up, and the answer is not at this time. Right now, we're doing, the market is still moving. We're doing all it is that we can to keep that market afloat, and we have to continue to pay vendors to keep that market afloat. We don't see how that helps actually achieve any goals at this time. Now, 3 months, 6 months from now, if we're still in the thing, I'm sure everybody's going to have to consider reconsidering everything that they considered over the summer. Mm-hmm. But at this point, that is not an avenue we're going down.
Okay. And some might argue you're probably using Bright more than you ever have used it in the past right now.
I will tell you that it actually is absolutely true. That out of the and the numbers is strange. Out of the 90-some thousand, last month, almost 90,000 folks logged into the Matrix system. So it is a big number.
Wow. Okay. Switching gears just a little bit here. So there has been some recent guidance from the National Association of Realtors with the interpretation of the off MLS policy and what that allows you to do and not to do. So can you provide a little bit of insight to those changes in interpretation?
Well, the changes look, the reality is this is a policy that's probably that is most likely to continue to evolve, because 95, not even higher than 95% of everything that's done out there falls within this. But there's so many specific cases that come up in specific applications that what it does do is it makes you restate some of the things. The biggest one that we're looking at right now really has to do with office exclusives and the ability to market those office exclusives. We're coming out with our language soon. I don't want to get the cart too in front of the horse, but essentially, if it's an office exclusive, it has to be within the office. That any outside of the office and marketing of that through emails or other methods is not going to be okay within the ending hour policy. So we're writing up and we're getting ready to go out with that in the coming days, and you'll be the first to get that information when it comes. But it really is about that specific area.
Okay. All right. I'm going to open it up to the questions from our attendees. So if anybody has a question, I would ask that you either put it in the chat or in the Q&A, and I will make sure we ask them. So here's our first one. Is Bright still working on us being able to email some type of sheet to our sellers prior to the listing going active? This would be helpful with showing them the description, pictures, and other information so that they can see what the consumers and agent will see once the listing is activated, and also let you know if they see any errors which could be corrected.
Hey, Kurt, I'm going to ask you to, and you probably know more specifics about that. I know we allowed a listing to be in a temporary, which is not absolutely right, a pre-published area. Do you know any more specifics about this question?
Something we've gotten pretty frequently off and on since Bright really came out.
Hey, Kurt, can you get closer so we can hear you a little bit?
Sorry, is that better?
Yeah, that's a lot better.
Okay, good. It's something we've heard pretty frequently throughout the last couple of years, and we've targeted more for well, to use internal terms, a 3.0 project in terms of a site redesign, because there are some, I won't go into to bore you with the details, there's some technical inefficiencies in producing from listing management a matrix level report, because they're technically two different platforms. It is something we have targeted. We don't have a timeline for it right now, but we are working on our 3.0 next generation project as we have this meeting here. And so that's something we have targeted for that project, but I can't give you a turnaround time on exactly that.
Okay. Another question we have is, recently we were told that Bright will be removing the compensation remarks section of a listing. Why does Bright have a problem with compensation remarks or conditions such as buyer agent compensation is subject to buyer agent accompanying buyer on their initial visit through the home? This is basically requiring them to be procuring calls and to eliminate any issues about that later.
Kurt, do you have insight on that?
That I haven't heard that. I'll have to check out on that.
Yeah, Sean, I haven't heard that one at all. I don't know anything about that one.
I do know we actually specifically instruct people to put things with the compensation remarks. Let me go back on that and check on that and see if that's something that's a rumor or actual something that's going to be happening.
Okay.
So, Shauna, we'll get that question, and then we'll get you a response so that we can follow up with this after we're done here.
Okay, great. Another question / comment. I tried to do a virtual showing, could not see it in the agent full page, but client and, oh wait, I said I tried to do a virtual showing, could not see it. I could see it in agent full, but client could not see it in client full. So it looks like there was an issue with the virtual showing, that you could see it on the agent full page report, but you couldn't see it in the client full page report, and what would cause that to happen?
Again, if anybody has the specifics on that, they can forward that over to myself, and I'll look into that. If you have the MLS number, that absolutely helps. Or contact our support center, who's best able to help with that. They can usually get you and pick up the phone within about 30 seconds.
Okay.
So.
Okay. If anybody has questions, if you can type them in the chat or in the Q&A, and we'll make sure that we answer those questions. Brian, one of the other questions that I had is, if you could give our members one piece of advice right now, what would it be?
Well, I think you actually already did, and I agree with what you said. This is like a sports season, and this is the time to invest. You know, the way I look at Bright, and the way I've been talking with all of our folks is, look, things are sort of weird right now, but this is our opportunity to actually double down on some of the things that we're working, so that when we come out of this thing, we're going to be in a better spot. I think it's the same advice for everybody too. Learn everything you can about what it is you're doing. Try to see if something is going to stick from this. You know, for example, you know, everything virtual, does that stay? Does that go? My guess, some of it does stay. You know, that folks probably will do things virtually further down the line prior to buying something. That would just be a guess on how it stays in there. But I agree with your statement earlier. You do everything you can to figure out what it is you can, so that when you come out of this, you're ready to go.
Okay. Another question that just came in is the agent production report. Can Bright make it so that an individual agent can set this up without needing the broker's permission? Maybe the better question is, what's the rationale behind having the broker having to give the agent permission to see that?
Well, but this is probably a better question for Kurt. That's probably the design that if the agent, my guess is it's good. We can take that back, so the agent can see their own production report. My guess is it was always meant for the broker to look at it, and it probably gives information across the entirety. So that's why it was limited to the broker. But we'll take that back and see if we can possibly do this individually.
We already have that written down, so we'll take it back as a suggestion.
Okay. I know that leads me to think about another question that we often get at RAAC. We have a lot of members who are duly licensed, so they have their real estate license in Pennsylvania, and they also have their real estate license in Maryland. And there's been some thoughts about, is the technology going to be developed so that they can quickly switch back and forth between their Maryland profile and their Pennsylvania profile, and that their production report could be all into one rather than their Maryland listing productions are here and their Pennsylvania production listings are over here.
Yeah. And you know what, Shauna, that sounds really good and really simple, and my guess that it's not. But I have heard that before. We'll have to go back and see. They're doing a lot of development for things moving forward, and I know that there's a lot of activity going across state lines here. And as you can imagine, it's Pennsylvania, Maryland, Maryland, DC, Maryland, and Virginia, and actually Maryland and Delaware. They're all over the place. So I know this is an activity that's on there, and we'll take that one back also to see if we can get some work done on that.
Yeah, we are actually in process in the investigation phase in this. So we're in the first stage of the development on the solution for it.
Okay, great.
And a lot of it was based directly on feedback from your subscribers. But there's also something that we hear from Delaware and also from New Jersey and Maryland and other areas. Anywhere where you cross over borders, you're going to hear that.
Okay. I guess another question would be, in your opinion, what are some of the best features of Bright that agents probably aren't using to their fullest capacity and that they should get some training on while they have this downtime?
I'm going to leave that for Kurt. He probably knows better than I do.
Well, we actually have, if you haven't taken advantage already, we have developed a managing your business during a shutdown class. And this is largely developed by our Pennsylvania CSEs and myself. To help create just basically a review of all the tools that help you continue to do your business during this time. Some of the biggest individual tools that you can use, one is the brand new open house method, in which it allows you to put the URL for your virtual open house into your listings, and also make it easier to search for that when you're searching for open houses. Mm-hmm. Also taking a look at new and different products within showing time. The ability to now search specifically and request virtual showings is a huge benefit. But for those of you currently struggling to manage your rentals, that's a big thing right now. If you're currently struggling to manage rentals, we're getting great feedback. It's a premium product, but it's called Rent Spree. And if you take a look at Rent Spree, the people who are investing in that right now, you can handle almost virtually every aspect of the rental process without ever talking to somebody. And the people who are using it are getting great feedback from it.
Okay. Good tips for all of you who are attending to maybe check out some of those products. Another question that just came in, is there any way to enter a listing of a new built home that you have sold to a buyer that was a custom and not within the MLS system so that it can show up in your agent production report? It's probably a Kurt question.
Yeah.
As a buyer, you can enter in. I'm trying to see if I'm answering this correctly. But I'm sorry?
As the buyer agent.
Yeah, you can enter yourself as a buyer and agent by entering it as a comp when you're entering the listing in. So that's the best way to handle that, was to use for comp purposes when entering the listing. And then you can get your the buyer credit for that. There is no way to get both lister and buyer credit after a listing has already sold. We encourage that listing gets entered into the MLS if people want to make sure they're getting both sides of that. But to collect the comp, we absolutely want to have people be able to get that buyer credit, especially if they are working the buyer side with a new construction company or otherwise not in the MLS.
Okay. Yeah. I guess another question might be is, what do you see that's on the horizon for the MLS in the next 3-5 years, hopefully long after this is a distant memory for what we're currently going through? What do you see is in our future?
A couple things, and we've been working on a variety of different things. So we call the current system that we're on MLS 2.0, and it involves all the different systems matrix and the existing listing input and associated tools as well too. We've been talking about MLS 3.0 now for probably about 6 to 9 months, and it's what we're working towards. And it's a little bit different, I think, in concept, Shauna. I mean, right now you have an MLS that's out of a box, right? And you do everything sort of in this box. We see 3.0 far different, and it anticipates what it is you're doing. It suggests what it is that you could be doing. It's very, it can adapt to what it is. You might be a buyer's agent one day and decide you're going to start listing. So it can see what it is that you're doing. It can see what your clients are doing. It can anticipate. So the idea of you actually having to go in and do stuff actually begins to go away. You know, the idea was, you know, I was driving to the gym one time, and I go up Route 2 and Starbucks pops up and it says, it knows I'm near there. And again, this is a silly example, but it's how they're using technology. And it's how we will be using technology, that it's seeing what you're doing, where you're looking, what the houses are, what your people are doing. And it's taking that information and it's suggesting it to you. We see, you know,
Oh, I think Brian just froze up.
Areas.
Okay.
We're able to do this because we're actually moving to the cloud right now. And the cloud has a lot of different built-in machine learning and data analytics and all these other different things that we're going to be able to take advantage of. Are there still going to be searches out there? Absolutely. But you know, the way we see it, if you're putting a listing in, the way this thing is working, and it's working right, it knows you're in York or Adams County, and where specifically you are. It knows the rules that you're having there. And it's allowing the agent to say, to make decisions about certain things as to have to go look for them. We know about public records and the issue of public records all the time. We're looking for better ways of getting that information and having it in there, knowing whether it's right before it goes in there prior to that happening, because most of the information that we get is wrong prior to getting in there. Another area that we're looking to take advantage of are photos. And the amount of data that can be had from photos. I mean, essentially, if you have a photo, it can basically tell you what's in the room, whether it's a kitchen, what kind of stuff is on the counters, where the floors are, things like that, what the dimensions are. So we're looking to take advantage of a variety of different things out there. And it seems pretty scary, but these things are happening right now. We're collecting a lot of the information right now so that it actually anticipates what it is that you're trying to do. It can actually modify what it is that you're trying to do, and it's not that far away. So the team is working hard on trying to make the existing systems that we work in with right now better, more reliable, and hardened, honestly. As we slowly pull these other things and put them into the workflow for the agents to use over the next 6 to 9 to 12 months. And I tell you, as soon as this thing starts, it's going to happen rapidly because it builds on top of each other. And the more it learns about what folks are doing, the more it can help you do those things. And we all know that early on Alexa was probably terrible, right? And you're cussing at it more than you're actually trying to do anything. But it is getting better. And that's the way I think we look at these things. We build these tools, and as they get better, they get introduced into the workflow. Again, the one goal is that the realtor is the person that folks have to go to because they have this information. I mean, nobody else can pull together lockbox information, showing time listing information, times that somebody went to Zillow's, times that a house was included in a CMA, all these other different facets to predict what else is going to happen in that neighborhood. I mean, nobody else can do that, or what a buyer may or may not do based on what it is that they're doing on their side. So we see this as leveraging all this vast amounts of data, which is just stuff, until you pull it together in a way that we believe that, you know, 36 months is a long time. We'll start seeing some things by the end of this year, certainly within the listing management piece, about how we're going to start leveraging data intelligence, machine learning, and these other things. And it's pretty exciting, with the whole goal of making the job easier for the realtor and making them more desired, not the right word, but needed in the whole process.
Those are good thoughts. Good stuff to come, hopefully. Prior to this whole coronavirus, there was a lot of talk, a lot of thoughts around how the iBuyer is going to impact the real estate industry. And some of that has been a little bit muffled since of everything that's been going on with the housing industry since then. But what are your thoughts about what the potential impact could be for the iBuyer?
So just like we said a little while ago, every time something happens, that whole thing may not survive. Like everything that's happened with this pandemic may not survive, but there's certain things like virtual tours or whatever, virtual showings, that probably will find a way in the workflow down the line. I don't know that anybody was necessarily looking for a whole iBuyer program. I mean, quite honestly, they've been around for a long time. Brokers have always been offering cash or whatever for houses and things like that. I know Remax and a couple others have been doing it forever. But I think if you focus on what was happening there, and it was the consumer who wanted more certainty about what it is that they were doing, and they were willing to pay for that certainty, pay in the sense that if you offered me 92 cents on the dollar for the house, I knew what it was, and I could decide whether I could live with that or not. I think out of the iBuyer program, we're learning that the consumer wants to know more certainty. How much is my house worth? How long is it going to take me to sell the house? How long is it going to take me to move and find a house? How long is it going to take me to close on that house? They're looking for more certainty in all these different things. And I think that's what the iBuyer program highlighted. So when we look at what folks were looking for, the consumer shows us where they want to go in all these different things. And we need to respond with the tools so that the realtor can actually give them that certainty. All the data analytics and machine learning are going to help them provide better answers to their buyer and seller about what the status is, and be that person, that go-to resource that they need.
Yeah, it's been interesting to see that with the amount of technology that we've recently had and all the information that's available out there to the consumer online, but yet we were posting record highs of buyers and sellers using realtors, and record highs are record lows of for sale by owners, probably in one of the best markets. I know in York and Adams County, 2019 was the best market we ever had. Highest median home sale price, largest number of homes ever sold, and the number of FSBOs were at historic lows. So it's been interesting.
I think it's a great point. And I think it's why that when anything starts happening, you sort of need to step back and take a look and say, okay, is the easy answer that I'm getting out of this really what's happening here, or is there more to it, and understanding what that is? And it goes back to, understanding these small little cracks in the market that you can build an advantage on.
Absolutely. Brian, we had a couple of questions here about your guitar collection that's going on back there. So how long have you been playing guitar, and what kind of guitars are you playing back there?
So I have all sorts of guitars back there. I've been doing it for 30 some years, and there's actually a couple good ones up there, and there's a couple really not so good ones. Like I have my first one from like 85 back there, and so it's something that I do. It's sort of like a roller coaster, like everything else. It's fun. It keeps me distracted. It keeps me thinking a lot of different things. And there's a lot of parallels that I have between music, being in the band, and company, and doing things, and everybody being together on the same thing. So it's been a part of my life for a while, but it really is just accumulation of 30 years. There's more stuff elsewhere.
Yes, I'm sure Stephanie appreciates all the guitars in the house.
As long as I'm down here, she's fine.
And Kurt, other people have enjoyed your collection behind you. That seems to be more interesting to some other folks. So,
we have our collections. Yeah.
Yes, everyone has a different collection. I have a collection of toys. I won't show it to you. It's shameful. It's shameful. Other questions that anybody might have, this is your opportunity to ask them. And while we wait for any more questions to come in, is there any final thoughts that you wanted to share with the members, Brian? Any words of encouragement as they're going through the most challenging time of their careers?
Look, the one thing, I live with a broker, and I do really, really enjoy this industry. The one thing I know is brokers and agents wouldn't be, if they're in this business, if they weren't resilient. And that's what I love about them. And, I was sending out a note today to the board, and, again, you try to find these little things in these little crises and build upon those. You know, I have found that we have been closer with our associations, you know, with the board, with our staff, and there's something to be learned from that and how we continue to do that, how we keep these conversations going when it's not a pandemic, you know, that it's sort of all the time that we're focusing on what it is that's going on out there. So I'm thrilled. I know it's not great. I do think we're gonna get ourselves out of this, you know, and hopefully it's good for everybody. But you know, in these dark times, I think we have come together, and I think we are trying our best to make this market as liquid as possible and help folks do this. And I've enjoyed doing it, and I've enjoyed our relationship, Shauna, immensely. That we're working here together to make the brokers and agents more successful in what it is that they're doing.
Absolutely, I appreciate it very much as well. So I'm not seeing any other questions coming in. So with that, I will just say a big thank you for taking the time out of your schedules. I know it feels like it is just one Zoom after another for you. So thank you very much for taking the time to talk to our members. And I hope you and your family stay well.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much, Shauna. We really do appreciate it.
All right. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks. You
Bye-bye.
too. Bye-bye.